we were all supervising someone for the first time. And mind you, we were their sole supervisor. Welcome back to my channel. This is Chelsea. If you are new, I'm a clinical psychology doctoral candidate. I recently finished the 4th year of my program and will be graduating this December. But in this video, I wanted to speak with you all about my experience being a clinical supervisor during my internship. So, before I get into this video, make sure that you are following the kid on all social medias. That's in the description box down below. And make sure that you are subscribed to the channel to get updates on my progress towards becoming a psychologist, okay? So, during my internship at the University of Memphis, part of the requirements that I had was being a clinical supervisor to a practicum trainee. And so essentially what a practicum trainee is, a person who is in a master's level or a doctoral level program who is completing clinical experience towards their training, and they get credit for in their courses. So for me, I had 2 different supervisees for the fall and for the spring semester, and how it worked at the University of Memphis as an intern was we initially met with, the interns met with the training director, and we talked about different models of supervision. We had an orientation period, so we talked about the different models of supervision. We read through them and tried to identify what our model of supervision would be. We met with all of the practicum students. It was like a table type of thing, so they allowed us to talk about how we would be as supervisors, even though none of us had experience being a supervisor to anyone. So we were all supervising someone for the first time, and mind you, we were their sole supervisor. Like, there was no they meet with somebody else for supervision and they meet with us alternately. No, we were their only supervisor, and we were being supervised by a staff psychologist. So how it worked was all of our supervision sessions would be recorded, and the only people who had access to it would be our supervisors for that our supervisor for that semester and the training director. So yeah, we all met, all the interns and all the practicum trainees met. They got to know how we would be as supervisors, and they shared like what their own approach to therapy was, what their interests were, and then they were able to rank us based off of who they wanted to be their supervisor. So that's how I was assigned a supervisee. And so before we met with the supervisees that we had, again, we had to identify our approach. We had to do a presentation on it. Like, if you've been a practicum trainee before, you've had to do like what they call like a case study or like a case disposition for your clients, where you say like what their presenting concern is and whatnot, what you're doing. I had to do case presentations for my supervisee. So we talked about the goodness of fit and things like that, different cultural differences, progress towards any supervision goals that the supervisee has. So for me, my approach that I was taking for supervision included like some different aspects from CBT in terms of like the format of supervision. So I would like to have an agenda set. I would ask my supervisee to come prepared with what they wanted to talk about and utilize supervision for, and I might have something that I wanted us to like talk about or follow up on or check in with them on. And so what I usually did was ask my supervisee how they were doing, how things were, for them outside of being a trainee, because I wanted to make sure that I was being mindful of them as a whole person and not just as a clinician. So I would ask how things were going outside of the training site, just to build rapport with them, get to know them, and if there was anything that they might have been going on or have going on in their personal life that might impact training, and we could process those things. So I did use a CBT, which is cognitive behavioral therapy approach, in part as a supervisor, but I also use some areas of psychodynamic approach, which essentially those two things are what I use as a clinician, but I bring that into supervision as well. And so what I did for the psychodynamic piece was essentially there would be times where I would process and explore my clients' thoughts, feelings, things that they did with, not my clients, my supervisees, their thoughts, feelings, you know, background experiences that have impacted how they think, maybe any biases that they have, and how that influences the work that they do with their clients, as well as how it impacts our supervisory relationship. So that was the second piece of my supervision style. The other one pulls from like the SAS model. I don't want to explain too much about it. Google it, SAS. But essentially it says that the supervisor has these different roles. And so there's another condensed version of it. But you serve as a teacher, a consultant, and a clinician. So I would switch through those roles based off of what my supervising needed. And what I would do is I would meet with them initially, get information about them, multicultural factors, social identities, all those extra things to understand their context. I would ask what their clinical interests were, what their goals were for the semester for us to work on. And then once we had their goals, we will work towards those goals. So I would make sure that we're addressing each goal that they have for supervision. So some examples that we had were being more familiar with diagnoses and the DSM, being more comfortable with diagnosing, being more confident in their identity as a clinician, being able to work with people from diverse multicultural backgrounds that are different from them, things like that, building their own confidence and whatnot, identifying what their clinical or theoretical orientation is, being able to fine-tune their case conceptualization skills. So these are the type of things that I was working on with my supervisees. And so we would watch some of their clips of sessions together, and I would give my feedback. Sometimes they would come in with a clip that they wanted me to give feedback on, or they just wanted to process like what was going on with them and get some clarity. Other times we would talk about like ironing out differences between the diagnosis they're considering. So we would call that differential diagnosis, and being able to help them figure out like what diagnosis really fits for this client. I liked to provide helpful tools. So I'm a very organized person. I created a sheet for screening when they were doing their intakes. Like important things to ask for risk assessment, important questions to ask for various types of mental health disorders, because this was their first training for both of my supervisees. So they hadn't like done intakes by themselves or done therapy, individual therapy either. So I gave some documents to help, not just with like doing intakes and assessing for diagnoses and things like that, but also resources for like theoretical approaches that they were trying to hone in or solidify their clinical skills in. And so we did watch some clips. I did provide feedback. As far as processing, I found it important to process my supervisees' feelings, behaviors, any reactions that happen in supervision, talking things through, addressing things, any concerns or maybe their concerns, my concerns, being intentional about how multicultural factors influence not just the relationship between me and my supervisee, but also how it's impacting the work they're doing. And so another piece of my supervision style is being multiculturally sensitive and intentional about having those kind of conversations. And so we did have conversations about race and how that impacted supervisees' work with clients, but also like their ability to give and receive feedback with me and things like that. So I found it to be very helpful. I really enjoyed the mentor aspect and the teaching aspect for supervision. And the other thing that I did in supervision with my supervisees was, because some of them hadn't had any experience with diagnosing, learning the DSM, I went through with the sheet that I created that screened for many different general common disorders. went through that along with the DSM, and we went through like, okay, this is what major depressive disorder looks like, this is the criteria, and we talked about the questions they can ask to assess for those things. We talked about considerations for clients who have trauma and things to ask and look out for and be mindful of and work with certain types of presenting problems. So I really enjoyed the supervisory aspect of my internship. It was one of the most helpful things that I got because I had never been a supervisor before, and this was my first experience. And so I found that to be most helpful for me and most enjoyable for me, being able to see the progress of a new clinician, starting off, you know, with some concerns and then seeing them be able to make progress and meet the goals that they have for supervision. And so it was very helpful for me. I learned that I do value having those conversations about how our different social identities impact us and our interactions with other people. Not just like the relationship that you have with your clients is being impacted by social factors, but also it's impacting the supervisory relationship. And that is one big thing that I learned during my time at the University of Memphis. And so after completing supervision for an entire year, I did realize that I would like to supervise other clinicians in my professional life and practice. So that is something that I do want to continue doing. I find it to be very rewarding. I will definitely do it again, and it's something that I want to keep doing in the future. So if you all have any other questions about what it was like for me being a supervisor, feel free to ask me in the comment section down below. If you want to see me talk about some other things in my experience during the internship, feel free to ask me about them. I'm pretty much an open book. But if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Make sure that you subscribe to my channel, and I do have some other videos coming out for you all talking about other things that I did during internship, like interviewing candidates, incoming interns and things like that, and interviewing practicum students. And I have some tips videos coming up as well. So make sure that you are subscribed to the channel and explore, because your girl has various playlists, cooking videos on here, traveling vlogs. So, you know, your girl likes to travel. Make sure that you're following me on all my social medias. Everything is linked down below, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye.